It is my honor to introduce the moderator of this session, Mr. Neil Dotto, founder and executive director of the European Parliamentary Forum for Sexual and Reproductive Rights.
We're here today to discuss a very important issue with an extremely distinguished and esteemed panel. So the issue that we'll be discussing is that very crucial nexus between population demographic change and climate change. We've heard yesterday about all the progress that has been made and needs to continue to be made in the issues of demography and population dynamics. Now we will discuss how these are being impacted by climate change. We will have with us a very esteemed panel composed of two ministers, our dear friends from UNFPA, and a youth leader. So I'll introduce them briefly, but we have His Excellency Sabir Hossain Chowdhury, who's the Minister of the Environment, Forest and Climate Change of Bangladesh. We have His Excellency Martin Moretti, who's the Minister for Women, Youth, Sports and Social Affairs of the Republic of Kiribati, and we had the pleasure of hearing you yesterday at the opening. We have our dear friend, notre très cher ami, Diene Keita, who's the Assistant Secretary General and Deputy Executive Director of UNFPA, our co-hosts here today. And I'm very pleased to have Elizabeth Gulugulu, who is the former UNGO Global South focal point, who will bring the youth perspective and also a wealth of experience to this discussion on population dynamics and climate change. Now, you've had the program, the concept note background in your information pack, so I won't take up too much time with this. And I'd like to go straight to different questions. So what we'll have is a question to each one of you, okay? And then we will have a sum up where we will ask each one of you some key recommendations. And as we can see, we only have 1 hour. And I've been told we need to do this in a Davos-style format. So we need to put on a little bit of a performance for all the participants to help them wake up and really understand the issue. We have two ministers here who are used to appearing before Parliament. So I know how you can be very convincing and punchy. And imagine that you're trying to convince a member of the opposition party to be on board with you, okay? So I'd like to invite you to speak a little bit like this, okay? And Your Excellency from Minister Chowdhury, I hear that you have limited time with us, so I'll start with you, okay? We heard yesterday how Bangladesh has been a leader in adapting to in population activities, and we heard the impressive track record from Her Excellency the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina about how the country has adapted over the many decades since 1994. And as the Minister for Environment, Forest and Climate Change, it would be interesting for all of us to understand how the government is supporting people, communities to adapt and become more resilient to the impact of climate change, taking into account the great progress that you've made, but because of Bangladesh's geographic situation, that progress becomes very vulnerable to climate change, perhaps more so than other countries. So it would be great to hear from you, Your Excellency. You have a couple of minutes.
Just a couple of minutes?
Yes. Imagine you're in Parliament speaking to the opposition.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil, and assalamu alaikum and good morning. Well, there won't be any fireworks because there really is no opposition when it comes to what we need to do on climate change. I think, there is unanimity across the board. We know the fact that it's an existential challenge. And we say it's also a defining challenge. So one of the things that we have looked at is how do we reimagine development through the lens of climate? So in the past we have talked about development in general terms, but now it is through the lens of climate change. And I don't want to go through the impacts of climate change on Bangladesh, but if I just give you one example, just visualize a map of South Asia, where you have got the Hindu Kush Himalayas to the north, and you have got the Bay of Bengal to the south. Now the reason why I make that framing is the melting of the glaciers means that we are going to have flooding in the short term, and we will have water stress or water scarcity in the medium to long term. So that's from the north. In the south, you have rising sea levels, which have implication in terms of displacing population, literally millions of people. Every day, the city that we are in today witnesses anything from 1,000 to 2,000 people every day who are moving. And this includes women, children, the entire spectrum of the population. And also because of the rising sea levels, we have salinity intrusion, which is having a huge impact on women's health. So whether it is miscarriages, whether it is other complications, and the reason for that is that water that they drink has a lot more salt in it than would otherwise have been the case. So drinking water is a huge challenge in the coastal areas. And this is actually, salinity is moving more to the north. So it's even coming to near Dhaka city. Of course, we see women traditionally as victims, which of course they are. But because in Bangladesh we couple climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction, we also feel that women are the pillars when it comes to resilience. They are likely to be 14 times more impacted than men. But when it comes to resilience, when it comes to moving families to cyclone shelters, moving their livestock, which has been a huge success in Bangladesh because of the early warning system, it is women who are playing that part. And what we have tried to do is to make a proper assessment of the needs of these so-called vulnerable communities and how they can then become pillars of resilience. Even in the entire climate discourse in Bangladesh, I said that we are trying to reframe development and reimagine development. We have the Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan, which talks about a completely different trajectory. So we are moving from vulnerability to resilience and then on to prosperity. So I think this is how we approach the issue. We have identified the needs. There are no fewer than 113 interventions when it comes to adaptations across the board. It's costing us a huge amount, almost $9 billion a year. And the government itself is putting in about 3.5 billion, which in itself is a huge amount. And we also know the growing nexus between climate change and health. This is something that we are becoming aware by the day. And we are in fact trying to update our national adaptation plan so that we can incorporate elements of health, both for women as well as children. Because we talk about the demographic dividend, the window is small, the window is narrow, so how do we maximize that is of course something of great concern and priority for us. Thank you, I'm watchful of the time, so go back to you.
Thank you very much. That was an excellent exposition. I would be convinced if I were in the opposition, so thank you very much. Now we go to His Excellency Martin Moretti, who is the Minister for Women, Youth and Sports and Social Affairs of the Republic of Kiribati. Just as a brief background, for those who may not know, your nation is facing a very dire threat as a result of climate change, with the entire nation facing the possibility of submersion. This is a very unique challenge compared to many other countries in this room. And it would be interesting to understand a little bit from you to describe what the people of Kiribati are facing and how it is that what it is that your government is doing to try to respond to this.
Thank you, and thank you everyone. It is an honor again to sitting in front of you to share the reality of what the Kiribati people facing and how the government will react. As we gather, yes, it is crucial that you realize that the climate change is not just an environment. It is a profound social, economic, and humanitarian challenges. This disproportionately impact of the most vulnerable members of the global community. And as you know, Kiribati is among the small island nations experienced harsh realities, climate change. Kiribati is only a few meters above sea level, and during the high tide, stream tide, and more frequent and the strong storm edge, Kiribati has been flooded, with coastal area badly eroded, and affected food crops, however, affected as well, and also underground freshwater. This is indicated that the low-lying and coastal region is struggling with the devastating impact of climate change on their lives and their livelihoods. In the context that we are centered and discuss the action those most vulnerable, in particular women and girls, their roles in our society are often discarded. Their resilience are tested during the climate extreme, and the support provided to address their specific vulnerabilities are not always catered for. It is imperative that we are sent the action response measures to alleviate those impacts and ensure gender response measures to impact of climate change. So, as we know, how the government responds, even though the Kiribati government adopted immediate protection measures to protect citizens sited in the coastal area through building seawalls and installation of sanitation plants and verify sanitary water. But much this indicates that are focusing on women and girls with this to inform the prioritization of gender response to climate policies. An intervention that address the specific needs and challenges. This includes ensure that the meaningful participation in decision-making is all level from the local communities to international forums. Investing our contextualized and practical education and skills development for women and girls is crucial. By empowering them for their knowledge and resource, and we enable them to adapt to climate change, building resilience and become agents of the change within their communities. Furthermore, the access to essential services must healthcare, clean water, sanitation, strengthening social safety nets, and expanding financial inclusion mechanism can provide a virtual lifeline for women and girls during the time of crisis. Now, our effort cannot be stopped international level, but we need meaningful and effective international support to address the challenge of climate change. This includes the increased financial assistance, technically transfer and capacity building initiatives tailored to the needs of vulnerable countries like Kiribati. In addition, please allow me to say that Kiribati acknowledges that the gender equality and women economic empowerment are vital components of the development policy, has made significant strides over the years. And we have to work tirelessly to dismantle gender-related barriers that create opportunity for women's full participation in all spheres of life. In fact, our culture would recognize the important role of women and girls play in the social and economic affairs, but our society has been further enhanced through legal and policy reform. Not only further empower women, male-driven are dominated in the extent that women and girls now the same access as men and boys in our country towards education, employment, business, and without any discrimination. So, my friends, as a result of such restorative and policy reform, I am delighted to inform you that gender equality is no longer an issue in Kiribati, as evidenced by increasing the number of the number of women holding high position in our governments. More secretary in our ministry are women. Our secretary to cabinet is a woman. Our speaker in parliament is a woman. Our chief justice in our high court is a local woman, first ever in the history of Kiribati. Participation in police women for the UN peacemakers, and equal access to overseas seasonal and neighbor mobility schemes demonstrate that our government committed in gender equality, which is aligned with the Kiribati vision for the next 20 years. That's no one left behind. So, in conclusion, please allow me to thank everybody, respectively the development partner, including UNBDA, UNFPA, who assist us in advancing warfare of Kiribati and chaos in Kiribati. Despite all the achievements that we have, challenges remain that we call continue the hard work to cooperation and solidarity before we can truly realize that equality and empowerment for women and girls. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It's really wonderful to hear about the progress in gender equality in your country, and also to have the voice of the Pacific at this very global setting. I think it's a very unique perspective, and we all learn a great deal by having you on this panel sharing your experience with us. Now we'll go to the United Nations, and we'll go to my dear friend, Yeneketa, who is the Deputy Executive Director of UNFPA. And we'll take a look at how climate change impacts the ICPD Program of Action. ICPD can be a solution or a way to address the issue of climate change. The two of us, we've been in many ICPD plus 30. It's the 30-year review of the ICPD Program of Action. The two of us, we've been in many such events recently. So we'd like to hear from your wisdom about how it is that we can look at this important issue from that perspective. Also, I'd like to depart a little bit from our notes that both of us have had, just to share a secret, maybe not so much a secret, but you were a minister in a previous life, okay? Can I ask you to share a little bit, to add to your comments, advice that you would have as a former minister to ministers here, to future ministers in this room, and what it is that, you know, with your perspective, you would suggest that they consider. The floor is yours, Yeneketa.
Thank you so much, Neil. Excellencies, honorable ministers, dear partners and friends in the room, and my dear little sister or daughter, whatever angle you want to take it. Allow me, Neil, to tell to the room who you are first. You work with parliamentarian and a very champion of SRHR and how to integrate that into, you know, development policies in countries. For me, having listened to the ministers here is very critical. I'm going to take a few aspects that the honorable minister from Bangladesh has mentioned the health part very well so, for the climate crisis. And honorable minister from Kiribati has mentioned the level of increase of water as well in small islands. What I would like to add to that is everything else, the Sahel and Sahara drought, where take water sources far away from women and girls and then put them at risk for gender-based violence. I would like to add as well the coastline's vulnerability with big winds, cyclones, etc. And of course, what climate change, the first impact is always can create emergencies. Emergencies that can become big humanitarian crises. So what do we do as UNFPA? Again, I think, let me take three practical examples on what we do. The first one is work at the community with women and youth-led organizations to make sure that we can help immediately to help the community to survive and thrive. The second thing is data. We try to collect data and evidence to make sure that we can learn from what is happening to make sure that it doesn't happen the same way, at least somewhere else. And the third example I would like to take is we adapt our way of delivering services and delivering commodities. How do you deliver commodities in a zone like Fiji or Kiribati when you have hot water surrounding everywhere? So we need to think that it's a really forward-looking. So that's what we do practically, to give just quick examples. Now, at the country level, I believe honorable ministers are here, and I would like to congratulate Bangladesh for what you do, because on the review of national determined contribution, out of 119 countries, only 38 integrate sexual reproductive health services, only that. And Bangladesh is a great model of doing so. So at the country level, my main recommendation would be for the new generation of NDCs, national determined contribution, it's really to ensure that sexual reproductive health and services are integrated. Why I'm mentioning that? To go to your question, ICPD. ICPD, I'll take only the PD part of it, population and development. There will be no population development agenda nowhere on this planet if the women, the girl, the boys, the men, the aging are not being taken care of. It's a population, it's a people agenda first. So all those NDCs at the national level need to be taken into account, and all ministers need to work with the Minister of Environment, because it's not only an environmental issue. As he said, there is a health issue, there is a social issue, there is a finance issue, etc., etc. So, and to go quickly to give chance, the third thing for the UN that we are is to work better together as a UN coordination. At the COP28, we really were not that organized. There was a divide between the North and the South, literally. Now for COP29 and 30, our Secretary General has said that need to change. We need to work on a more coordinated way to ensure that we have maximum impact on the outcome on next. And we all know that the debt crisis has had an impact on the global South. So for what is coming this year and next year, we need to make sure that anything we do, health services are integrated in it. How do we do that? We need the Minister of Health with the Minister of Environment and others and planning to work together to get to that kind of point. That's where we stand today, and we need to make sure that we get there as soon as possible with practical evidence on people's life. And all new NDC, that will be my last point, should really be gender and age responsive. You know, flood can impact women and girls, but it impacts aging person as well, since the housing goes down. But let me stop here now, and we'll continue if you have time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that. I think we all see why it is that UNFPA is leading the work on this issue, where you combine both the intellectual knowledge of how it is that countries can adapt, but then also the very practical know-how as to how it is that you can help countries through their country programs.
Sorry, you asked me as minister.
Yes.
As minister, I have only one recommendation. It's really that common sense of we are that made us be selected as ministers to ensure that we think about our people first before anything else, even before the resources, the money, because I think that's the most important thing, to think about the human being first. And when we have that, the rest will come through very logically. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. I understand that His Excellency Chowdhury may have to leave fairly shortly. Before we go to our last speaker, may I just ask His Excellency Chowdhury, do you have any, for the final part of this session, we're meant to ask everyone if you have any key recommendations that you would like to share with the other panelists and with the audience. So I'd like to ask you now, and then you please feel at your ease to exit whenever you need to go back to your duties. Okay.
Thank you. I think as I limited myself to 2 minutes the first time round, I may take another 2 minutes now. You know, just a few points, as our fellow panelists just mentioned. You know, I think we all have to come to terms with a few facts, and they may not be very comfortable, Number one is we can't go on adapting indefinitely. There are limits to resilience. It's all very well talking about plans, but we cannot solve a problem by growing the problem. We are, on the one hand, we are not controlling our emissions, and on the other hand, we are talking about adaptation. The two cannot go hand in hand. So, do we respond to the disease, or do we respond to the symptoms of the disease? And the symptoms are, what we see today, but the real disease is the emissions. So I think the 1.5 degree Celsius goal, and 1.5 is no comfort level. Look at what's happening today at 1.1. So this temperature goal, I think, is absolutely central. And also, let us not forget that there are some irreversible damages that have already taken place, that are locked into the system. So that increases the need for adaptation. We need to go on. The issue of climate justice, I hadn't addressed it, but I think, one, of course, is that those who have contributed least to the problem are in fact being impacted the most. That's one. Number two, those who are least able to adapt are being forced to adapt beyond their capacities. And if you look at it from a national country perspective, so I mentioned earlier that the government has allocated $3 billion for adaptation. Why should any country have to choose between investing in the future, investing in women's empowerment, investing in the opportunities of demographic dividend on the one hand, and responding and fighting climate change on the other? We should never be in a position of either or, but that is what is happening today. So, we can talk about communities, we can talk about locally led adaptation, we can talk about empowering women, securing their sexual and reproductive health rights, but at the end of the day, that is the one area where we have to focus. And the means of implementation isn't just finance, it is also technology, it is also capacity. So I think that's really how we need to frame this. And at the end of the day, the extent to which we are able to have the communities on board will have a big impact on the results and the outputs that we are trying to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Those were very wise words, and I think those are some key messages that we'll retain, especially really questioning ourselves: are we treating the symptoms or are we treating the disease? And also the importance of bringing communities on board to make these very important choices. So thank you very much. Please feel free to exit as when you need to. So. And thank you very much to the government of Bangladesh for the warm hospitality that we've had here the past 2 days. So thank you, Your Excellency. Now I'd like to turn to Elizabeth Gulugulu, who is the former UNGO Global South focal point. And so naturally you'll bring the youth perspective. I'm sure you're used to doing this by now, okay? But really, what it would be interesting to hear from you is, we've just heard from His Excellency, the Minister from Bangladesh, about the potential long-term impacts of climate change, and some of these impacts are irreversible. And so, it would be interesting to hear, as a youth leader, how climate change is shaping the perspectives and aspirations of young people around the world, and also their expectations of the future. Floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the question, distinguished guests. Your Excellencies, all protocol observed. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I just want to say congratulations to UNFPA, the government of Bangladesh and other governments for pulling off such an amazing event. Yesterday's session was really amazing, so congratulations to you all. Just to respond to your question, how our perspectives have been shaped. Number one, we all acknowledge that the climate change is real and is really existing. But now young people, their perspectives has been shaped in terms of their decisions. And when I'm talking about decisions, I'm talking about when it comes to career-wise. So it's no longer an issue of just applying to any kind of job. Young people are now aware nowadays. They're looking at a sustainable job. So they'll just not apply for a job because they want a job. They're looking at jobs that do not contribute to GHG emissions. When I finished my BSc, I really definitely knew that I would never work for any organizations, and my parents would ask me, why are you not applying for this job? I told them that the only job that I'll do is I'll just work for the UN. So anything that comes my way, I'll not do it. So this is how aware young people are now. And it just shows that, it's really eye-opening, when, our generation now knows what to do and what not to do. Then the other thing that I also want to highlight is political engagement. Yeah, a few years back, the United States of America announced that they were no longer part of the Paris Agreement. Then a new leader came in. He showed that he was determined to take back the US to be committed to climate change. And this is what young people are looking for. They will just not go and vote if they do not believe in you. They will just not go and vote for someone who is not determined to change, different lives, or to be committed to implement different kind of policies. She was talking about the nationally determined contributions. How are young women, how are girls being incorporated into national policies, into our national adaptation plans? So this is how young people have been, their perspectives has been shaped. They are part of these dialogues, they engage with decision makers. Even themselves, they've also realized that, no, we can also be part. It's now no longer a matter of us being part of the table, but they've also got to understand that we can be MPs, They're also now running for these offices, which is what we really need. Not just crying foul all the time, but if you're part of the process, then at least you have some sort of like influence within the process. Then another thing that I want to mention is on advocacy and awareness. I'm sure you have seen Greta Thunberg, the Fridays for Future campaigns. We are now in an era whereby, young people are no longer asking, they are demanding. If you have seen those kids marching, advocating for climate change, they really know what they want. You cannot tell them, they know they're the ones that are now telling you that this is what we want. It's either you do this or, this will happen. So advocacy and awareness, it also goes to the extent of climate change litigation. In 2017, approximately 884 cases were filed in. Then in 2022, it was now like more than 2,100 cases that were filed in on climate litigation being led by children and youth advocates suing their governments because they are not committed to the effects of climate change. Then last but not least, we are seeing young people that are really active in terms of mitigation and adaptation activities. They are the ones that are now, doing these projects. If you're talking about, reforestation projects, agroecological practices, young people are at the forefront. And last year, just to give an example, I think UNDP funded approximately 50 young people who came with these amazing solutions. They have got to understand that it's not only the government that are responsible, it's not only the UN agencies that are responsible, but they also can contribute something. It could be in terms of reducing GHG emissions or trying to adapt, making sure that their communities are climate-proofed. So this is what I will say for now. Then I will respond to the other questions as we move on with the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really wonderful. And it was really interesting how you covered both the aspect of personal responsibility, that what we do as individuals is important in the overall effort to combat climate change, but also what it is that we can do as citizens, engaging in litigation, holding parliamentarians to account, engaging in politics. So that was a very well-rounded perspective on youth engagement in this perspective. Now we come to the part where we can hear some recommendations. Okay, so we've had the first introductory speeches or interventions, and now it would be interesting to hear a little bit some of the key recommendations that each one of you would have to formulate on this subject. But also, I would be interested, and I think all of us would be interested to hear if you have any thoughts about what you heard from the other panelists. Our colleague from Bangladesh had to leave, but so it would be interesting if you have any thoughts based on what the other panelists said, and also any key recommendations you would have to formulate to the other panelists, but also to the distinguished audience. May I turn to His Excellency from Kiribati, first to share your recommendations and any thoughts that you may have. You have about 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. And it is very privilege for me, okay, and it's an honor for me as a first time to be part of the panel. You know, I thought it's like we three was a statement, you know, to explain what's going on, but now I understand that something we dialogue and explain what we have been experienced, especially in our people. And of course, we recommended that now it's been explained that we are now the gender equality in Kiribati is the same as some other countries, and I really appreciate that. Our government also focus that now we try to, our manifesto this year, we try to increase our budget to try to, you know, to share to all women and elders and children especially, you know, because we can be all the same in towards like in schooling, employment, social benefits. You know, the elders now they have a social benefit every month. They have receive some pension, especially also the unemployment, especially the widow, because you know they are very important in our culture, as we recognize their role as they are the mother of the backbone of our family. You know, they are working hard for us, and I recommend that if you also can all combine, to join hands together to support our women and girls, especially in climate change. So Kiribati also amply ask you join us, and we fight for our women, as we know they are very, very important in our life, because they are the mother of earth. We can't be sitting here without our mother. So that's why I mentioned now we are women in Kiribati, they are high position now. So, and I do believe that we are the same feeling that we are feel our women and mother and girl and sisters, young girls. Please join Kiribati to support, especially in the climate change impact of the crisis. Thank you all for be part of this very important dialogue. And allow me also to thank the Bangladesh for their hospitality before we end this session, and thank you for everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to turn to our dear friend Yeneketa from UNFPA. Maybe you have a few minutes, 5, 6, 7 minutes, to share some key recommendations that all of us should bear in mind as we go back home after today's event.
Thank you, Neil. I would like to go first back on what the minister from Bangladesh said about the choice by countries. I think I was very pleased to hear that from a cabinet member. That's why I was telling we need different ministries need to work together. If you don't want to have to select, you have to work together. It's as simple as that. I was Minister of International Cooperation, so my job was to find money to bring into country. And then my job was to help technical ministries to get what they want. So I needed to understand. So environment is a major technical ministry. So I truly believe he cannot work by itself. He needs to work with all the social ministry, the scientific ministry, and the economic ministries. That's the only way to make sure that that 3 billion, which is fantastic for any given country, is really well shared and distributed through their main priorities. And main priorities for any given country is woman and man, population. Because whatever we do is for the population. We do population, we work on climate change because of the planet. For the people and for the planet, that prosperity goes through women, girls, being not victimized in any sort of situation. and as well men being taken care of properly, especially the aging ones. Now, my recommendation, I have a dream. You all know that sentence, right? I do have a dream. Don't forget that it's just out of COVID. Nobody believed that the airplane could stop. Nobody believed that you go to a country, you get stuck there. But yet, during that time, we saw big generosity from some country. They will still fly, some airplane will still fly around to pick up people, to take them wherever they want to. Some others close totally, even their border, by route, they close their border in places we cannot imagine. So I have a dream that climate does not need passport to go anywhere. You don't need visa to get stuck in a wind, in a cyclone, an hurricane, anywhere. So that dream is that famous climate action, adaptation we have heard, the climate justice, the just transition. It will only work if it is linked to reproductive justice. That's the only way. Because at the end of the day, before I come to this set today, I had to take a shower, I had to get dressed. I cannot do that in public. A family without a house has other things to do than trying to go and think about even food, if I may put it this way. A family without decent water, clean water, you cannot do exactly the same thing. So for me, for any government, it's really to make sure that the climate justice adaptation is linked to reproductive justice and adaptation. That's the only way to tackle proper inequalities. For us, as a UN, it's really what the minister said apply to the UN now. We love to put into advance our own area specificities. That's where, as a head of program for UNFPA and my colleagues from other agencies, we're working together to make sure that the COP29 and 30 are more coherent and more comprehensible, and they should be gender and age responsive. For me, that's absolutely critical, the capacity to work together. And of course, the other one is remain the data. This is the demographic diversity conference. The data are critical. Evidence-based solution is important. We heard about the digitalization. When you have an earthquake in Haiti, that breaks down all the hospitals, and you go, you see that. You see, and then women start giving birth under tents, And that's the magic of data, to know where to go, when to go, and make sure that you can save lives there. But yet, we need to build for the future as well. So, climate justice for a just transition linked to reproductive justice, and all of us working together. And my last recommendation are for the young people. I love so much what Elizabeth said. It's so important. For the young people, we always say that we need to have them as decision maker and implementer. Maybe where we are forgetting them, and that's where I met her for the very first time, is with the academias. They are all students, they think. I met her with the Queen University in London. So please, academia researchers, take the brain of young people. They may have right solution on which you can modelize and digitalize. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I think that was really a very profound contribution. I think sometimes in conferences like this, when we talk about very, very important subjects, we almost lose an understanding of what these means in terms of real people's lives. And really recalling just the basic human dignity of being able to clean yourself in your own privacy. That's a very important aspect. It's a very important reminder as well. And also understanding the link between climate justice and reproductive justice. I think that's also an important contribution, an important link to understand. So thank you very much. Now, Elizabeth. So maybe if we can hear from you about any recommendations, thoughts that you would have. Also, I can't help but ask, as a young person, what would you like the future to look like? What would be your vision for, leaving this conference? How it is that we can all work a little bit better towards a this issue.
Thank you so much. So unfortunately, the minister just left, but I just wanted to, reflect on something that is said in terms of coming up with a needs-based assessment. We cannot think for young people. We cannot tell them what to do. It's important to use data, like what she said. Data is important. Let's come up with a needs-based assessment and figure out what young people want, right? And then from there, we can try to incorporate them in our budgets, in our national plans. I've seen this working in some countries. So let's not treat young people as an umbrella group, but let's try to identify what they want. In most cases, people think young people, what they want is money. It's not money. You know what? Yesterday, the executive director acknowledged the youth position paper. Sometimes it's just a bit of that support which goes a long way, acknowledging things and encouraging young people to continue doing amazing. So she just didn't acknowledge. She even cited what is listed in the position paper. This is what young people need. It's not only about finance, but it has to start with coming up with a needs-based assessment so that we understand the actual needs that they do need. Then secondly, I want to highlight that a few years back, the ILO did a green jobs assessment model in some countries. Now, this model, what it does is it can predict the kind of opportunities that country will have in a particular sector. You will figure out that in some sectors, it could be the hydroelectric, it could be, renewable energy, etc. and stuff. But they also figured out that there were gaps. Young people were not taking these opportunities because they were not capacitated enough. So this also comes to the issue of technological transfer, knowledge transfer. So it's something that we need to do. Let's try by all means to empower young girls. Let's try by all means to empower women so that they can they can fill up these gaps that are there. It could be in the renewable energy sector. It could be in any other sector according to the results of the green jobs assessment model for that particular country. Then the other thing that I wanted to mention is when it comes to young people are quite sensitive sometimes. And sometimes, they do have the energy. And that energy, it might frustrate some of you, but it's good to actually have young people with that energy. What we have to do is, let's try to nurture that energy and direct it in the right, and channel it in the right direction. So when you see young people don't, feel offended to say, oh, they talk too much or they are demonstrating their what, it's okay, that's the energy that we need. Let's channel it in the right direction. Then young people have also realized that, okay, we have protested well enough, but I think it's now time to also channel our energy into coming up with projects. So they are moving from protest to projects. And this is where you can come in. Like I said, it's not all about financial capacity. Sometimes we need that technical capacity. That, okay, fine, this is the project that you want to do. We are going to look for A, B, C, and D banks to come and, offer some support. It could be institutional capacity that a youth group might need. So this is what I wanted to share. And also when it comes to the future, the future does not look so bright, especially for young people. And the reason why it does not look so bright is because countries have committed and they are backsliding, which is really frustrating, especially if you're a young person in the space. You're advocating for this, and then after 2-3 years, you hear that this country will no longer be committed to such and such. So I think it's good to make sure that when young people are speaking, when they bring in their position paper, let's try by all means to, try to engage them in a conversation. If their position paper will not get them what they want, let's try to help them to make sure that they'll get what they want through their position paper. Sometimes they do have the ideas which they cannot really put on a paper, or they cannot speak that technical language. And immediately we block what they have submitted to us. But it's not what is needed. Let's try to sit down with them. We have so many experts. It could be NDC's experts, different kind of experts, sexual and reproductive health experts. Let's sit down with them so that they understand how they can shape up their proposals so that they can be accepted. So I think this is all I have to say, and thank you so much.
So thank you very much. That was really wonderful. And even though you're saying that you're not too optimistic, I sense some optimism in there. So it's I see really a desire for change and a willingness to get involved and to take control and to see a better future. So I think that there is a great deal of optimism there. So thank you very much for that. I think we've come to the end of our panel, even though we're ending a little bit early. But I think I'm happy to give back a few minutes to the conference organizers, because we've had a very nice, thorough panel discussion this morning. And so maybe just to wrap up, to thank the panelists once more, so for excellent interventions and very useful, very actionable recommendations. So if I can invite everyone to thank the panelists. And maybe just to wrap up, to say thank you to the organizers. I'd like to really express a big debt of gratitude to the government of Bangladesh, and also to the co-sponsors, co-organizers, the governments of Japan, the governments of Bulgaria, and naturally to UNFPA for pulling all of this together. Without UNFPA and the brain trust that is UNFPA, I think we would not be here. So thank you very much, Dianiketa, for as a representative of the organization here, and thank you to the UNFPA colleagues who've made this possible. And maybe just to wrap up, as we're here in Bangladesh, I'd just like to end with a small quote of a Bengali poet intellectual who is Rabindranath Tagore. He was a Bengali poet who received the Nobel Prize for Literature over 100 years ago, at a time when Bangladesh was still one place. But I think it's a quote that would be appropriate for this setting here. And it is, everything comes to us that belongs to us if we create the capacity to receive it. So I think this would be nice parting thoughts for this panel. So thank you very much for your energy and engagement.